My best friend tried to sabotage my marriage by lying to my husband, and now she's demanding I let her move into our guest house because she deserves a second chance. The moment I found out what Sophie, 33F, had done, it felt like the ground dropped out from under me. She'd been my best friend since college, my confidant, practically family. So when I realized she'd been lying to Mark, 36M, my husband, trying to turn him against me with manipulative stories, I couldn't believe it. For weeks, she'd fed him concerns about me, twisting things I'd shared with her in confidence and making it sound like I was hiding parts of myself from him. But it all came to light one Saturday afternoon when Mark sat me down, looking exhausted. "Lily," he began carefully, reaching for my hand, "we need to talk about Sophie." The moment he said her name, I felt a pit form in my stomach. I thought he was about to confirm the suspicions I'd had, that he was maybe interested in her. She'd been around a lot lately, even showing up when Mark and I would be spending a quiet evening at home, claiming she was just in the neighborhood. It'd been annoying, but I'd written it off as Sophie just going through a tough time. "She's been telling me things about you that I just didn't know how to bring up." He paused, looking like he was piecing together a difficult puzzle. "She's been saying that you're not happy in our marriage, that you've been confiding in her about regretting marrying me." It felt like I'd been slapped. I knew Sophie had been meddling, but I hadn't realized the extent of it. I felt a flash of anger. "Mark, I have never said anything like that to her. Why would I?" He nodded, seeming relieved. "I didn't believe her, but she was so convincing, Lily. She's been bringing it up for weeks. She told me you were thinking of leaving, that you'd talk to a lawyer." A chill ran through me as I realized the lengths Sophie had gone to in order to plant these doubts in Mark's mind. I couldn't believe she'd done something so underhanded, so malicious. "She said that," I whispered, horrified. "That I'd talk to a lawyer?" He nodded, looking pained. "Yeah, and I'm sorry I let her get into my head, even for a moment. I thought maybe you were unhappy and just didn't know how to tell me." I squeezed his hand. "Mark, none of that is true. I haven't talked to a lawyer, I haven't thought of leaving, and I am happy in our marriage. I don't even know what to say. I thought she was going through a rough time, and I was just trying to support her." We sat in silence for a moment, each of us absorbing the extent of Sophie's betrayal. She'd taken our trust, mine and Mark's, and tried to twist it to her advantage. But why? Why would someone who would claim to be my best friend for so many years go to such extremes? Mark spoke up after a while. "I think you need to confront her, Lily. She's clearly not being honest, and it's affecting both of us. If she's willing to lie like this, I can't imagine she has your best interests at heart." As much as I dreaded it, I knew he was right. Sophie had crossed a line. No, she demolished it, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. When I called her to meet, expecting an apology or even an excuse, she blindsided me with something completely unexpected. We met at a quiet cafe where we'd often gone to catch up over the years, a place that now felt tainted by her betrayal. She showed up looking nonchalant, almost cheerful, as if the tension hanging between us was imaginary. But when she sat down, I didn't waste any time. "Sophie, why did you tell Mark those things?" I demanded, my voice tight. "Why would you lie to him about me wanting to leave him? About talking to a lawyer?" She looked surprised, but not apologetic. "Lily, I was just trying to help you," she said breezily. "You told me yourself that you've been stressed, feeling like maybe marriage isn't what you thought it would be." I couldn't believe my ears. "Stressed? Sophie, everyone feels stressed sometimes. That doesn't mean I want to end my marriage. You twisted my words and you know it." She sighed, waving her hand dismissively. "Look, maybe I went a little far, but it's because I care about you. I thought you might not be as happy as you say you are, and I wanted to make sure Mark was aware of it." My anger flared. "So instead of talking to me, you decided to go behind my back and make things up. You created problems that didn't exist, Sophie." She leaned back, shrugging. "Maybe I misread things. But can you really blame me? I thought I was helping." "Helping?" I echoed, incredulous. "Sophie, you were sabotaging my marriage. I don't even know if I can trust you anymore." Her face fell briefly, but then she quickly regained her composure, adopting a look of indignant self-righteousness. "Well, maybe you should consider that I was looking out for you. If you can't see that, then maybe we have a bigger problem. It was clear that Sophie had no intention of apologizing or even admitting she'd done anything wrong. I'd come here hoping for a genuine explanation, some sign of remorse, but instead, she was doubling down, as if she was the one who'd been wronged. "So that's it?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "You're not even going to apologize?" She crossed her arms, her gaze defiant. "I don't have anything to apologize for. I was trying to protect you from yourself. And frankly, I think you owe me for being there when you needed someone to vent to about your marriage." I stared at her, disbelief flooding over me. "Owe you? For trying to ruin my marriage?" She sighed dramatically, leaning forward. "Look, Lily, I don't have anywhere to go right now. My lease is up, and I was hoping you'd let me stay in your guest house for a bit. It's the least you could do, given that I've been such a supportive friend." I felt as if I'd been doused with ice water. Not only was she refusing to admit her actions, but now she was demanding a favor. The audacity took my breath away. "Sophie," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained anger, "you tried to break up my marriage. You lied to my husband, and now you want to move in with us. Are you even listening to yourself?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, you can't hold a grudge forever, Lily. Everyone deserves a second chance, especially after all I've done for you. Besides, it's not like I was the one who was unhappy." I felt the anger boiling over, a mix of disbelief and betrayal clouding my thoughts. "Sophie, I've given you second chances again and again, but this is too much. I can't trust you, and I won't risk my marriage just to make you comfortable." She leaned back, giving me a look of pure irritation. "Fine, if that's how you feel. I just hope you realize what you're losing." It was in that moment that I saw her clearly for the first time, someone who had never truly been my friend, someone who was willing to manipulate and lie just to get her way, and who would never take responsibility for her actions. Standing up, I looked at her one last time. "No, Sophie, I think I'm finally realizing what I've gained by seeing who you really are." Without waiting for her response, I walked away, my heart heavy but resolute. I'd lost a friend, yes, but I was done with the lies, the manipulation, and the toxic loyalty I clung to for too long. It was time to protect my marriage and myself from people who couldn't understand the meaning of true friendship. And as I stepped outside, breathing in the cool air, I felt lighter, as if I'd just set down a weight I hadn't even known I was carrying. That evening, I told Mark everything. Sitting together on the couch, I recounted every detail of my conversation with Sophie, her complete lack of remorse, and her audacious request to move into our guest house. Mark listened quietly, his brow furrowing as I laid it all out. By the time I finished, his expression had shifted from disbelief to something colder, more resolute. "Lily, he paused, shaking his head. I don't even know what to say. I knew she'd have crossed a line, but this, to turn around and act like she deserves something from you after all that." I nodded, feeling a pang of relief just having him listen and support me. She made it sound like she'd done me this big favor by meddling, like I somehow owed her for putting our marriage at risk. Mark wrapped his arm around me, pulling me close. "You don't owe her anything, Lily. Honestly, I think you're handling it better than I would. She's shown you exactly who she is." We sat in silence for a moment, the reality of what Sophie had done settling heavily between us. I could see in Mark's expression that he was just as shocked as I was by the depth of her betrayal. We trusted her, welcomed her into our lives, and she'd used that trust to try and break us apart. "Do you think she's always been like this?" Mark asked softly. "Maybe we just didn't see it before." I thought back to all the years of friendship, the times Sophie had been there for me during hard moments and celebrated with me during the good ones. But in hindsight, I started noticing patterns, small manipulations, moments where she'd subtly sown doubt or created drama, times when her support felt conditional. I'd brushed them off, thinking she was just intense or overly protective, but now it felt like I was seeing those moments for what they were, hints of her underlying jealousy, of a need to control. "It's like I'm finally seeing the full picture," I murmured, shaking my head. I ignored so many signs because I trusted her, but I think this was the last straw. Mark nodded, squeezing my hand. "I'm here for you, Lily. Whatever you need, whatever helps you move forward, I'm with you." The reassurance was exactly what I needed, grounding me in the reality that I wasn't facing this alone. Sophie's actions had been destructive, but they hadn't achieved what she'd wanted. Instead of driving a wedge between Mark and me, they'd only brought us closer, exposing the cracks in a friendship that was never truly genuine. The next few days were a strange mix of relief and sadness. I hadn't responded to Sophie's latest text messages, and her silence on the matter only confirmed what I suspected. She didn't really care about the damage she'd done. She only wanted to get what she could from me, to use our friendship as a bargaining chip to gain sympathy and, ultimately, a place to stay. But her messages kept coming, each one angrier than the last, as if she was entitled to my forgiveness. She shifted from casual apologies to snide remarks, subtly implying that I was overreacting or that I'd never been a real friend if I could drop her over something so small. Small, I said aloud one night, showing Mark her latest message. A real friend wouldn't cut me off over something so small. Is she kidding me? Mark looked at the text, eyebrows raised. She's doubling down. If she can't manipulate you into giving her what she wants, she's trying to guilt you into it instead. A new message pinged through, even angrier this time. You're being so petty, Lily. Don't think people haven't noticed the way you keep everyone at arm's length. You're not perfect either, you know. I felt my anger rise again, but this time it was mixed with something closer to pity. Sophie had twisted herself into a narrative where she was the victim, unable or unwilling to see her own role in our falling out. But I wasn't going to be pulled back into her web. Not anymore. Are you going to respond? Mark asked, watching my expression. I shook my head, setting my phone down. No. I don't need to justify myself to her. Let her think what she wants. I'm done with this. And I truly was. Cutting Sophie out felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. The freedom that came with setting boundaries, of reclaiming my peace, was something I hadn't anticipated. But as the days passed, I realized just how much energy I'd poured into maintaining a friendship that had only drained me in the end. With Sophie out of the picture, I poured myself into my own life, rediscovering the hobbies and passions I'd set aside for too long. I'd always loved photography but hadn't touched my camera in months. Now I began spending my weekends capturing the beauty of the places around me, finding a new creative outlet that helped me heal and regain confidence. And with each outing, each photo captured, I felt more like myself. Mark noticed a change in me too. You seem lighter, he commented one morning as we sipped coffee on our porch. I think letting go of Sophie was the best thing you could have done. I smiled, feeling the truth of his words. I think so too. She'd been taking up too much space in my life, and I'd never even realized it. We spent that weekend together, reconnecting in ways we hadn't in a long time. Without Sophie's constant interference, the little cracks she tried to create in our marriage healed, replaced by an even stronger bond built on trust and mutual support. We talked openly about our future, our dreams, and the life we wanted to build together. I found myself excited for what lay ahead, free of the resentment and doubt Sophie had tried to plant in my mind. One evening, as we were watching a movie together, I received a call from an unknown number. Hesitant, I picked it up, expecting it to be Sophie using someone else's phone. Lily? Came a woman's voice, hesitant and slightly nervous. It's Amber, from work. I know this is unexpected, but I needed to talk to you about Sophie. Amber was a mutual acquaintance of ours, someone Sophie had always been close to at work but whom I hadn't seen much outside of the office. Intrigued, I'd agreed to meet her for coffee the next day. When we sat down, Amber looked at me, her expression a mix of embarrassment and concern. I'm sorry for reaching out like this, Lily, but I didn't know who else to talk to. I know you're close with Sophie, and I wanted to understand what happened between you two. I took a deep breath, giving her a brief but honest rundown of what Sophie had done. I didn't embellish or try to make her look worse. I simply explained the facts. Amber listened, nodding slowly as I spoke. I suspected something like this, she said, her voice quiet. Sophie's been different lately. She's tried to turn a few of us against each other at work, creating tension and gossip. She even told me that you'd asked her to be a support system because you were unhappy in your marriage, which I didn't believe for a second. My jaw clenched, the weight of Sophie's manipulation settling heavily. She'd been creating stories, spreading lies even outside our friendship. But knowing this, I felt a strange sense of validation, as if I'd finally seen her true colors. And now, so had others. Amber placed a reassuring hand on mine. I wanted you to know that people are starting to see the truth, Lily. You're not alone in this. I think she's struggling with something personal, but it's not fair for her to drag others down with her. I thanked Amber for her honesty, feeling both comforted and saddened by how deep Sophie's betrayal truly ran. Leaving the cafe, I took a deep breath, letting go of the last lingering fragments of anger and hurt. I couldn't control Sophie's actions or the chaos she created, but I could control how I responded, and I was choosing to move forward without her. When I returned home, I shared the conversation with Mark, who listened intently. "This is her pattern," he said thoughtfully. "Creating drama, then blaming everyone else. But you don't have to carry her burdens anymore. Let her choices be her own responsibility." He was right. Sophie's actions, her need for control and attention, were no longer mine to bear. I had shed her weight from my life, and as I looked around our home, filled with warmth, trust, and love, I felt nothing but gratitude for the life I was building, free from her influence. Sophie may have tried to sabotage my marriage, but in the end, she had only strengthened it, bringing Mark and me closer than ever. And as I looked toward the future, I knew I was ready to keep moving forward, leaving behind those who couldn't celebrate my happiness. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a peaceful rhythm I hadn't known in a long time. With Sophie out of my life, a strange calm settled over our home. Mark and I felt closer than ever. The strain she caused had lifted, leaving us with an almost renewed appreciation for each other. It was like a fog had lifted, allowing us to be fully present in a way we hadn't been able to before. I focused on my photography, diving deeper into the art, experimenting with styles and locations, and I found myself waking up each day feeling lighter with a fresh sense of purpose. But Sophie wasn't content to just fade into the background. One evening, as Mark and I were cooking dinner together, my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it, half expecting to see another text from her, but it was something far worse. My heart skipped as I read her message. "If you don't let me stay in the guest house, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've been hiding." Mark saw my expression shift, and his hand froze mid-chop. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etched across his face. Wordlessly, I handed him the phone. He read the text, his expression darkening. "What is she talking about?" "I have no idea," I replied, feeling my anger flare. "It's just more manipulation. She's trying to make me feel like I owe her something or that she has leverage over me." Mark nodded slowly, his face a mixture of anger and calm resolve. "Let her try. I know there's nothing she can say that would shake us." But Sophie's message had touched a nerve, planting a small seed of worry. Despite knowing it was likely an empty threat, part of me couldn't help but wonder what she might have up her sleeve. I reminded myself that her threats held no weight, that there were no dark secrets she could dig up. And yet her persistence kept me on edge, as though she was hovering at the edge of my life, refusing to let go. The next morning, I received another text from Sophie. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Lily. I'm giving you one last chance." Exasperated, I decided to put an end to this once and for all. I texted back, "Sophie, I'm done. Stop contacting me. You're not welcome in my home, and I don't owe you anything. Whatever you think you're holding over me, it's time to let it go." There was no response, and I felt a brief relief. But that evening, as I settled into bed, my phone pinged with yet another message, this time accompanied by a voice message. I hesitated before pressing play, Mark watching me from across the room as the recording began. Her voice was cold, biting. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Acting like the victim here. Well, I know you better than you think, Lily. I know how you ignored me for years while you were so happy with Mark. I was there through all of it, remember? Every complaint, every moment of doubt you had about him. You leaned on me because you didn't have the guts to be honest with yourself. I know all your flaws, and I'll make sure everyone else does too." The message ended, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the room. Mark looked at me, a mixture of shock and anger in his eyes. "Is she seriously trying to twist your own vulnerability against you?" I nodded, numb. "She's weaponizing every private conversation, every small insecurity I ever shared with her. She's trying to scare you into thinking you're still somehow in her debt," he said, his voice hardening. "But that's a lie, and I think you know that now." I took a shaky breath, grappling with the reality that someone I trusted so deeply could use my past insecurities as a weapon. Sophie's threats were hollow, but they were relentless, forcing me to confront the uncomfortable truth that my friendship with her had been one-sided, built on her need for control and my own willingness to ignore the warning signs. The following day, I made the decision to block Sophie's number. As petty as her threats were, they were becoming too toxic to tolerate. I wanted no part of her games, no matter how many messages she left. I'd already given her enough of my time and energy. It was time to draw the line once and for all. A week passed in blissful silence. Mark and I went about our days, our lives returning to a sense of normalcy without the intrusion of Sophie's manipulation. I focused on work and began planning a new photography project, an idea that had been forming in the back of my mind for weeks. I wanted to capture the concept of resilience, images that spoke to strength born out of vulnerability. It felt therapeutic, like a way to process the emotional upheaval Sophie had caused. But just when I thought she was finally out of my life, an unexpected message from Amber, Sophie's coworker, appeared on my phone one afternoon. "Hey, Lily. I thought you should know that Sophie's been talking about you at work, spreading rumors. She's telling people things that just don't seem true." I felt a familiar pang of dread, but quickly reminded myself that I was past letting Sophie's actions control my life. Amber had already reached out once with her concerns about Sophie's behavior, and now it seemed Sophie was growing more desperate. I texted her back, thanking her for the heads up, but made it clear that I didn't intend to engage with Sophie's drama any further. I'd had enough. Amber responded with empathy, promising to keep me updated and letting me know that most of their coworkers saw through Sophie's antics. "People are starting to see her for who she really is," Amber wrote, "and I want you to know that I believe in the person you are, regardless of whatever she's trying to stir up." Reading Amber's message, I felt a wave of gratitude. The truth was that I wasn't defined by Sophie's distorted version of our friendship, nor by the rumors she tried to spread. I built a life with people who knew and valued the real me. Friends like Amber and, most importantly, my husband, who stood by me even in the face of Sophie's lies. With each day, I felt Sophie's presence fading from my life, replaced by a sense of peace and empowerment. Mark and I continued to rebuild, focusing on the future and all the possibilities it held. And as the weeks turned into months, I realized that my life was thriving without Sophie's influence, her drama no longer darkening my days. One evening, as I was reviewing some of my recent photos for the Resilience Project, Mark came up behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "These are beautiful, Lily," he said, studying the images. "They're powerful. You can see the strength in every shot." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "Thank you. I think this project has been a way to channel everything I've gone through, everything Sophie put us through. It's my way of moving forward." He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. "You're stronger than she'll ever understand. You're resilient, and that's something no one can take from you." In that moment, I knew I'd found a place of healing Sophie could never touch. Her attempts to sabotage my marriage, her manipulation, and even her final threats had all failed, leaving me with a newfound clarity and self-assurance. She tried to break me down, but instead, she'd only made me stronger, teaching me the power of boundaries, self-respect, and unwavering resilience. And as I looked around at the life Mark and I were creating together, one filled with love, trust, and the quiet joy of true partnership, I knew that I was finally free from Sophie's shadow. I'd emerged from her betrayal with a life that was undeniably mine, shaped by my own strength, and filled with the people who truly cared for me. It was the ultimate second chance, one I'd given to myself. In the months that followed, the freedom I felt from cutting Sophie out of my life began to reveal itself in all kinds of unexpected ways. I was finally letting go of the emotional weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying, the years of overlooked manipulations and subtle betrayals disguised as friendship. My focus shifted completely to building the life I wanted, and each day I felt more connected to myself, my work, and most importantly to Mark. With Sophie's drama no longer clouding my vision, my photography blossomed into something truly meaningful. The Resilience Project I'd been working on had taken on a life of its own, with each photo capturing stories of strength and growth, themes that resonated deeply with me. I spent countless hours photographing people who had overcome challenges and had emerged more grounded, more whole, stories that reminded me of my own journey. One afternoon, as I was reviewing my photos, I received an email that made me pause. It was from a local art gallery that had come across my work online. They were interested in showcasing my resilience series as part of an upcoming exhibit on personal transformation. I was stunned and ecstatic. This opportunity felt like the culmination of all my hard work, a way to put everything I'd been through into a space where others could feel it too. When I told Mark the news, he grinned, pride and excitement shining in his eyes. "Lily, that's incredible. You've worked so hard for this. I'm so proud of you." His words warmed me, reminding me of how he'd stood by me through everything, even when Sophie's lies had tried to wedge their way between us. "I couldn't have done it without your support," I replied, smiling. "You've been my rock through all of this." In the lead up to the exhibit, I poured myself into perfecting each piece, making sure every photo spoke to the power of resilience and the strength that could only come from overcoming hardship. Friends and family offered to help, and soon enough, I had a small team of people in my corner ready to support me through this milestone. When the night of the exhibit arrived, the gallery was filled with an energy I hadn't expected. My photos lined the walls, each one illuminated, telling stories of survival, perseverance, and renewal. People drifted through the space, pausing to take in the images and reading the short descriptions beside each one. I could see their expressions shift as they connected with the stories, a powerful reminder that resilience wasn't unique to me. It was something everyone carried within themselves, in one form or another. Mark stayed close, his hand on my shoulder, offering silent support as I greeted guests and answered questions. I felt a deep sense of pride, not just for the art on display, but for the journey that had brought me here. This wasn't just an exhibit, it was a testament to the strength I found in myself. As the evening wore on, a familiar face caught my eye. Amber, the colleague who had first warned me about Sophie's gossiping. She gave me a warm smile, her eyes lighting up as she approached. "Lily, this is absolutely stunning," she said, gesturing around the gallery. "I knew you were talented, but it's something else." "Thank you, Amber," I replied, feeling a surge of gratitude for her support. "It means a lot that you're here." She hesitated, her expression turning more serious. "I wanted to let you know that Sophie's no longer at our company. I don't know all the details, but I think some of her behavior finally caught up with her. Well, let's just say that people saw her true colors." The news surprised me, though it didn't shock me. Sophie had been caught in a pattern of manipulation for years, and it seemed that, eventually, the consequences had caught up with her. "I hope she finds peace with whatever she's going through," I said quietly, meaning it. I felt no anger, only a deep sense of relief that her actions were no longer part of my life. Amber nodded, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're better off without her, Lily, and look at what you've accomplished without that weight on your shoulders." As she left, I took a moment to absorb what she told me. Sophie's departure was a reminder of how much I'd outgrown that toxic dynamic, of how freeing it was to surround myself with people who truly supported me. As the gallery began to wind down, Mark and I took a quiet moment to stand among the photos, taking it all in. The space felt like a reflection of everything I'd become, a testament to the choices I'd made to honor my own worth, my own happiness, and my own resilience. Mark looked at me, pride evident in his eyes. "Lily, this is just the beginning. I can't wait to see what else you'll create." His words touched me deeply. "I never would have believed I could get here, Mark. And it's because of people like you, the ones who never wavered, who stood by me when I needed it most." He took my hand, pulling me close. "You've always had that strength, Lily. It's been there all along. You just needed to see it for yourself." Standing there, surrounded by the images of resilience that had become such an important part of my journey, I felt a peace that I'd been chasing for far too long. The pain and betrayal Sophie had caused were real, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they had become stepping stones, parts of my story that had led me to this place, this moment where I was free to live, to create, and to love without fear or compromise. As the night came to a close, I looked around the gallery one last time, taking in the faces of the friends and family who had shown up to celebrate with me. They were my true support system, the ones who had believed in me even when I'd struggled to believe in myself. And as I left the gallery, Mark by my side, I knew that I was walking forward into a future that was mine alone, one that I built from the ground up with resilience, grace, and unwavering strength. As life settled into its new rhythm, the gallery exhibit became a launchpad for more opportunities than I'd ever anticipated. The Resilience series resonated with people far beyond my small community, and before long, other galleries reached out, interested in showcasing the collection. Each invitation felt like a confirmation of everything I'd been working toward. The project had started as a personal journey, a way to process pain and growth, but now it was branching out, touching people from all walks of life. With Mark's encouragement, I decided to expand the series. I began traveling to interview and photograph people who'd overcome challenges of their own, documenting their resilience and learning from the stories they shared. Some were overcoming health struggles, others were navigating loss or rebuilding their lives after relationships had ended. Their stories held a mirror to my own, reminding me of the common threads we all share in our journeys to heal and grow. One afternoon, after returning from a photo shoot with a woman who'd survived a serious accident, I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. Mark walked into the kitchen, seeing me lost in thought, and wrapped his arms around me. "You're doing something incredible, Lily. You're giving people a voice, helping them see strength in themselves that they may not have even known was there." I turned to him, feeling the weight of his words. "I never imagined any of this. It feels like everything I went through has led me here, to a place where I can not only live my own truth, but help others live theirs." He smiled, his eyes warm and full of pride. "You're living proof of the strength you've captured in those photos, Lily. You're exactly where you're meant to be." In the months that followed, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment as the project continued to grow. I'd put together an entire series for a new gallery showing, titled Unbreakable, featuring stories of people who had risen from setbacks stronger and more self-assured than ever. The exhibit was set to open in a few weeks, and I was invited to give a small speech about the inspiration behind my work. The night of the Unbreakable opening was a milestone I would never forget. Mark was there, of course, along with Amber, friends, and even a few new acquaintances who'd supported me along the way. I stepped up to the podium feeling nervous but deeply grateful, and looked out over the crowd gathered to celebrate this moment with me. As many of you know, I began my voice steady. This series started as a way for me to process my own experiences. I was going through a difficult period, and the camera became my way of finding clarity and strength. But what I realized along the way was that resilience isn't just something we experience in isolation. It's a shared journey, one that connects us all. Every story here tonight represents someone who has faced life's toughest moments and chosen to rise above them. To me, these images are a reminder that we are all unbreakable in our own ways. As I stepped down from the podium, applause filled the room, and I felt a wave of pride and peace wash over me. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was part of something larger, a collective strength that I'd been fortunate enough to capture and share. As I moved through the crowd, chatting with guests and answering questions, I caught sight of someone standing near the back, her expression unreadable but familiar. It was Sophie. For a moment, I was stunned. I hadn't seen or heard from her since Amber told me she'd left her job, and I thought she'd moved on, letting me do the same. But here she was, standing silently, watching me from a distance. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, even pity. But I also felt a strange sense of calm. Sophie approached slowly, her gaze hesitant. "Lily," she said softly, "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me here. But I saw your exhibit announcement, and I wanted to come. I needed to see what you've done." I took a steady breath, keeping my tone neutral. "I appreciate that, Sophie, but I don't know what you're hoping to find here." She looked down, guilt evident in her expression. "I came to apologize, really. I know it hurt you more than I'd like to admit, and I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've lost a lot of people because of the choices I made. I realize now that I've only got myself to blame." Her words surprised me, though I kept my emotions in check. "Sophie, I spent years hoping you'd see how much your actions affected me. But I had to learn that I couldn't wait for anyone else's validation to heal. I had to let go." She nodded, looking both remorseful and sad. "I see that now, and I know I can't ask for your forgiveness. I just want to say that I'm sorry, Lily. You deserve everything you've built here. It's incredible, and I know it's because of the strength you always had inside you." Her apology, though years too late, brought a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. "Thank you, Sophie," I said quietly. "I hope you find your own peace too." With that, she nodded and turned to leave, her figure disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, feeling a weight lift that I hadn't even known was there. For the first time, I truly felt free, not only from Sophie but from the pain and betrayal that had once defined that chapter of my life. Mark joined me a moment later, his arm around me as he looked after Sophie's retreating figure. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I smiled up at him, feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. "Yes," I replied, my voice full of certainty. "I'm more than okay." That night, as Mark and I returned home, I reflected on how far I'd come, on the incredible journey that had led me from heartbreak and betrayal to a place of resilience and fulfillment. Life, I realized, had a way of giving us exactly what we needed, even if it wasn't always what we thought we wanted. The following weeks were a joyful whirlwind. The Unbreakable series received positive reviews, and more galleries expressed interest in future projects. I even began hosting workshops for other aspiring artists, sharing my experiences and encouraging others to tell their stories through art. One evening, Mark and I sat together on our porch, watching the sunset. The sky was a brilliant blend of pinks and oranges, and as I looked over at him, I felt a deep, unshakable gratitude. "This is the life I never could have imagined," I said softly. "And I wouldn't trade any of it, not even the hard parts." He smiled, his hand finding mine. "Those hard parts led you here. They showed you your strength, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become." With him beside me, I felt ready for whatever came next, knowing that I was walking forward with a heart that was whole, a life that was mine, and a future full of possibility. Sophie's betrayal had once cast a long shadow over my life, but now it was nothing more than a memory, a distant chapter in a story that had grown beyond my wildest dreams. The life I created was filled with people who supported and uplifted me, and I knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with strength, resilience, and the quiet confidence of someone who had truly learned to let go.